Hello everyone, this is my triple front guide for CM7 the Scorpio Cup. This is a guide that is kind of a partner guide to that Suzuka guide that I posted a few days ago that talks about using Suzuka as an ace runaway. In this guide, I'm going to talk about why I'm choosing to run triple front, the strengths and weaknesses of a triple front composition. I'm going to talk about some of the theory that I have behind running triple front and exactly why I'm running it. I'm going to show a couple scrims of how my triple front team is performing, and I am going to talk a little bit about building the individual UMAs, but I'm mostly planning on saving the more in-depth guides for the individual UMAs for a separate video. This is going to be really about team comp. My views on CMs is that I really love crafting out a team comp that really works together. I like viewing teams holistically rather than just a couple of individual UMAs and trying to figure out how my teams work against other kinds of team compositions, against other meta team compositions. And I try to be very conscientious of what I'm building and how it might interact with the meta at large. So I'm going to talk a lot about that in this video, but first things first, I do want to put up a little bit of a disclaimer. Right, so this probably isn't necessary, but I just want to explain where I'm coming from. So this is my method, which has been my method for every CM. I try to build rough aces quickly, and then I do a lot of early scrims to scope out the early meta. I chat with my friends about it, I scrim against my friends, I refine my aces, I see what works. So these videos, this info that I'm sharing is my personal experience, and it's not my intention to declare the objective truth with certainty. Your experiences might be different. The end meta of the CM might be a little bit different. This is early meta. I just want to communicate what I'm seeing early on for other people who might not have the same kind of time or hyperfixation as I do to do all of this kind of early work to see what's working and what's not. So right away, let's jump into the triple front comp pros and cons that I have seen so far. So for the pros, you have lobby control. What I mean by this is that if you're running Silent Suzuka, you know that there is going to be a Silent Suzuka in every single lobby, and you can build your UMAs accordingly. If you don't have Silent Suzuka, if you can't run her, then sometimes some lobbies will have her and some lobbies won't, and there's going to be a difference in how those lobbies are performing. You know that there's always going to be at least one horse at the very front of the pack, and you know what horse that's going to be. And so with this, it becomes easier for you to plan a more consistent team. Another pro of the triple front comp is Taiki blocking. So Taiki Shuttle is one of the strongest UMAs on this track right now. Her ult is very good on this track, and if she hits it, if she hits it perfectly, she's usually able to win. I've even seen like really good Taiki shuttles beat solo Suzukas before. They can be really, really scary. So an advantage of the triple front comp is that it works to block off slots that Taiki Shuttle can proc her unique from. And I'll go more in depth into this later, but it is kind of what I think is a little bit anti-meta. And it can really help you versus those really strong UMAs. Additionally, it's pretty effective versus late and end UMAs because when you're running a Suzuka, and she essentially stretches out the lobbies so that there's a lot more distance between her, between your fronts, and like a late gambler or an end. So what this means is that they have the lates and the ends have so much more distance to make up. I almost never see a late or an end winning a lobby that actually has a Suzuka that has started well. Because there's just so much distance for them to make up, and it's not like other UMAs don't have accelerations. So, they're trying to gamble on their accels, but other UMAs are also hitting accels. Additionally, I think that the triple front comp is really good for a Suzuka ace because it augments her strengths and her weaknesses. So what I mean by this is that if you are running a Suzuka and you know that your Suzuka has a win condition, which is being the only Suzuka and hitting her skills, and she also has a loss condition, which is that there is another Suzuka in the lobby that will kill her. So by running a triple front comp, you have two fronts right behind that Suzuka to help to take over if that Suzuka dies to another Suzuka, right? So what I'm trying to explain by this is that you can plan for your Suzuka to be alive or dead, and it doesn't really affect the building of your Umas as much as it might if you were trying to build your Suzuka with like a late surger. And I'll show you again a little bit what I mean by this later on when I'm talking about like generalized builds. So now the cons of the triple front comp, because it's not a perfect comp. There are counters to it. I have lost, lots of times on it. So the first con is that there is a massive reliance on your Suzuka. Your Suzuka is the most important horse in your comp. And if you get into lobbies where she is late starting or whiffing her taking the lead skill or, getting caught up by an opponent like Summer Maruzensky in the mid race, your entire comp is going to start suffering. It's still possible to win if your Suzuka just like totally beefs it, but it's harder. Like you can just see the staggering effect to the rest of your comp if your Suzuka falls behind, or if she late starts, or if even one of your own fronts can get ahead of her and like really screw up her ability to stretch out the lobby, like I was saying earlier. So you're really putting a lot of eggs in the Suzuka basket, not because you need her to live, but because you need her to set that good pacer rabbit for your other fronts. Another con for the triple front comp is acceleration. So there are acceleration options. I know that a lot of people have been commenting on my Suzuka video talking about how they feel like they can't run fronts with Suzuka because Suzuka will always take the angling and scheming proc. And this is true to a certain extent, but there are other accelerations you can get on your fronts. And I'm going to go into those in a minute. It's just that sometimes these accelerations are a little bit, you can't rely on them as much as you could rely on, being the front, getting angling and scheming, and then just winning. I'm going to recommend a little bit later, you still put angling and scheming on your fronts for a couple specific use cases. And I'm also going to recommend a couple other accelerations, but it's never going to be a totally sure thing that all of your fronts are going to hit all of their accelerations. Another problem with this comp is that it struggles versus other comps that are very front heavy. So when I've run this comp, and I'll show some scrims of this, when I run this comp and I run into another comp that has 2 or 3 fronts, so then the lobby becomes like half fronts or 70% fronts, right? When this happens, those acceleration issues are really amplified because a lot of the acceleration that you're running in this composition is based off of being in certain slots. And the composition is usually very good at maintaining those slots and being in those slots, which is one of those things that I was talking about with, that lobby control. However, if there's a lot of other fronts and they're all built very well, you no longer have a monopoly on those slots that you can get those accelerations from. So it can make your Umas feel a lot more inconsistent if you're in those lobbies. It's really a rock, paper, scissors at the end of the day, which a lot of comps are, but I will say that the existence of other well-built fronts can throw a lot of wrenches into this comp. The last thing that might be difficult for running this comp is just the build requirements. I talked a lot in my Suzuka video about how fronts are very accessible in this CM. It's really easy to build them because you can use the Smart Falcon power card for groundwork, and you get the Mihono Bourbon Wit card for taking the lead. But there's still some build requirements that you have to adhere to, especially when you're building your other 2 fronts that aren't Suzuka. You might have a more difficult time getting your groundwork procs, for example, or you might have a difficult time managing your SP and building the correct affinity trees to get the skills and the parents that you need. So yeah, those are the pros and cons that I have found so far to the triple front comp that I've been trying to run. Let me know if you can think of any more or if you have any comments on anything that I've said, and we'll just go ahead and go into the kind of theory crafting. Thank you. All right, please forgive my scuffed MS Paint diagrams here, but I think that this is the best way that I can explain exactly what I mean by position blocking and taking slots and how it works with the accelerations in the triple front comp that I am running. So first, I want to look at our comp in a vacuum. So devoid of any other UMAs in the lobby. Let's just go ahead and so you're going to have a Suzuka, and she's going to be in front. And then you're going to have two more fronts that are going to be kind of like this. So this is probably the final corner. I'm just going to do a straight line because that's much easier to visualize. So your Suzuka is going to be here. Your two fronts are going to be here if it's in a vacuum, right? What this means is that basically your Suzuka is always going to be first. And then your other front is always going to be second. And your other front is always going to be third. Now, shooting for victory hits the third or the fourth slot. What that means is that, again, in a vacuum, one of your two fronts is always going to be in the correct position to hit shooting for victory. So this means that you want to run both of your fronts with shooting for victory, because whichever one is in front might not proc it. Whichever one is behind is going to proc it. Again, in a vacuum, but if you're in a room where you are the only person running fronts at all, this is pretty much exactly what's going to happen. So because of this, you want to run shooting for victory on both of your behind fronts, the two non-Suzuka fronts. Now, what happens here when there's another Suzuka? When there's another Suzuka and no other fronts, we're just going on this assumption, now one of your Suzukas is going to be first, one is going to be second, and both of your fronts are going to be third and fourth, which is where we proc shooting for victory. So when you're running an UMA that you know is always going to take that first slot, you can go ahead and manipulate the slot availability to have those accelerations that people maybe might not think of when you're running a front. So if you're running a Suzuka and you see another Suzuka, these Suzukas are probably both going to die, which means that both of your fronts will hit that shooting for victory and have that acceleration to carry over and win. So now let's go ahead and talk about Taiki blocking. I mentioned this in my pros and cons video, but if there is a Taiki shuttle, and if she's being run as pace, which is probably going to be the most common Taiki shuttle that you're going to see, then Taiki shuttle as pace, if all else goes well, is going to be behind your two fronts. So this means that we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So Taiki, this pace Taiki, has to be fourth. If there's another pace in front of her, say another opponent is running like an Ogre and the Ogre is in front of her, this Taiki is not going to ult. She's not going to proc shooting for victory, and that is her primary win con. So what you're doing by running three fronts like this is you are blocking slots that Taiki needs in order to activate her powerful unique and win the game. Now, if there is, let's say, a Taiki pace and another Suzuka, this is not a totally uncommon scenario. If there's a Taiki pace and another Suzuka, then it's the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Taiki doesn't get to proc her unique. Now, of course, she still can. If it's a really good Taiki and she, she passes one of your fronts or she passes a dying Suzuka really, really early in the track, which can happen, then she'll still get it. But this is the theory that goes behind countering Taiki Shuttle, who I believe is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest UMA on this track. So this is mostly for pace Taiki. If Taiki is being run as a front, which I do think is probably the best position to run her in this CM, then of course she can be up here. In which case, she would get that unique proc. She would probably do very well. But there's always a chance if you are running your two fronts that even if Taiki is a third front, you can still try to get ahead of her, try to keep her back there. And then, of course, if someone else is running a Suzuka, you still deny that unique. So a lot of my theory crafting and a lot of my thoughts about this comp is really more about blocking Taiki Shuttle. This is something that I did in CM5, which for me worked very well, and I had a pretty high win rate and won the finals without running Taiki Shuttle in CM5, even though she was very strong in it. Um, yeah. So now let's go ahead and look at the other accelerations that we have available to us here. Okay, so I have here angling and scheming first flexible, understrained final push first inflexible. Just so you know, final push is the white version of unrestrained, so I'm counting it as kind of the same acceleration skill because it has the same proc rate. Now, what I mean by this is we're imagining this is the final corner, similar to this, and this line is these two lines are the proc zone of both angling and scheming and unrestrained. We're just imagining this for now so that we can do a quick comparison. So this is the proc zone for both of those skills. Now, if you are using angling and scheming and you are a Suzuka and you are here, you're going to hit angling and scheming right here, and you're going to do that acceleration. If you are a Suzuka, if there's a Suzuka here who hits it, and your Suzuka is here, you don't hit it. But if you pass that Suzuka, you hit it here. Of course, passing a Suzuka who's proc angling and scheming is a little bit tricky. But if that Suzuka is dying, then it's actually happens fairly often. I wouldn't say every single race, but it happens often enough that there'll be like Suzuka here and Suzuka here, and then your second front, they're dying. Your second front comes up here, and then your second front passes them and sorry, your second front passes them and hits here. And so then right here is where your second front is going to proc angling and scheming. It procs anywhere on this line between the two proc rates, or between the two, beginning and end, right? So it's a flexible skill. Understrained doesn't work that way. So the way understrained works is that in the beginning of the race, before you've left the gate, it's going to look at this and it's going to take a certain point, and if you are first in that point, you get the skill. If you're not first in that point, you don't get the skill. So if you are Suzuka and you're first right here, and this is your understrained proc, you're going to get the understrained proc. Going back to the last example, if there's Suzukas here, and they're both dying, and your first comes up here to overtake them, if your understrained proc was here, you don't get it. If your understrained proc was here, you do get it because you're in the lead when this is happening. But you only get one shot at this. So understrained is a very unreliable acceleration for a non-Suzuka front, and I really wouldn't recommend taking it. But because angling and scheming is flexible, you can take it. And it works on your fronts in the event that Suzuka dies within the proc zone. You overtake her and you proc it there. The last one is Redshift. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this one. This is a Red Maru only skill. The reason it's Red Maru only skill is because the duration of it is longer on Red Maru herself, and for everybody else it hits too early and it ends before the acceleration zone of the final spurt starts. So for Maruzensky, she's going to get a couple seconds at the very end where she's going to be able to use that acceleration, right? But for everybody else, maybe the acceleration is like from here to here, and they don't get that additional time that they can use to accelerate. That's why that's why you're going to see a lot of Red Maruzensky. And I'm going to make a separate video just about Red Maruzensky because I've seen some people running her with really interesting builds in positions that are not front, and I think it's really interesting. So I would love to talk a little more about it. But this guide is going to focus on that triple front comp. But anyway, that's kind of my thoughts, my theory crafting on triple front and why I like it as a even though maybe angling and scheming seems a little bit intimidating. Um, and again, you kind of remember back to my cons list of if there's a lot of fronts and you're relying on shooting for victory for third or fourth, but there's a front here, 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 and here, like that kind of messes up your old timing, right? Um, so that's kind of why I think that a lot more fronts in the lobby do counter this strategy. But for me personally, I like the idea of countering Taiki Shuttle. Um, yeah, so that's what I got. That's my fun MS Paint theory crafting for the comp that I'm running. Thanks. So I set up this scrim in the practice range so that you guys could get a really clear view of what I mean when I'm talking about Taiki blocking. So I ran it with 4 NPC Umas. They don't matter. This is not a scrim to show you how well I'm winning or whatever. Specifically, I really want us to focus on the fact that there's 2 Suzukas and the fact that there is a pace Taiki shuttle. And this is actually a really, really stacked Taiki. I'm going to show her to you afterwards. But basically what's happening right now is exactly what I illustrated in the kind of theory crafting MS Paint, where there's 2 Suzukas and my 2 fronts, and that's taking up slots 1 through 4, which means that Taiki in slot 5 doesn't have access to her unique. And so you're blocking her off from that really significant unique and ultimately hard countering her. So as you can see here, my Suzukas are dying, but my 2 fronts back there just proc shooting for victory. Taiki did not proc shooting for victory, so my 2 fronts here are moving ahead, and now it's past the shooting for victory threat window, which means that Taiki's just not going to proc it. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. My 2 fronts win here, and I guess only one of them can win. But, you know, they both win in spirit, because I like to think that they're best friends. But yeah, so here's the Taiki, and I picked what I felt was a really good one to showcase here as a pace Taiki. It's a S+ Taiki, really nice stats, lots of skills. Like, she's a very, very good pace Taiki, but because I didn't let her proc her unique, my triple front comp was able to win. So this is a room that has a front Taiki and a bunch of other fronts. I did this room to showcase how a front Taiki can still counter a triple front composition, and to show why Taiki is really strong in a triple front composition, because if this front Taiki was yours, then obviously you would have won. So basically, running triple front is kind of it's kind of mean in a way to Taiki players, because it forces Taiki players to either have to choose between running her pace or running her front. When you're running Taiki as front, you have a very good chance of countering triple front comps, but you completely lose if you are up against comps that don't have very many fronts at all and your Taiki is first or second. So you force these Taiki mains to make those decisions, where she's better in pace versus heavy late lobbies. I love that Fuji ults there. And then she's better in front versus heavy front lobbies. And so I think that increases your win percentage chances on triple front. So one of the caveats, and one of the things that I had listed out as the cons of triple front, is that your Suzuka is kind of the linchpin of the composition. She needs to be built very well, and if your other fronts are built much better than she is, then your comp is actually going to suffer for it. So there's a couple, I have some videos that I'll show where it's possible for your front to actually kidnap your own Suzuka early on in the race if your Suzuka misses a skill like taking the lead. And when this happens, you don't get that pacer rabbit effect on the lobby. So you lose your ability to really distance yourself from the paces and the lates, and that really hurts this comp. So whenever that happens, it's not great, and it does happen sometimes, because sometimes your Suzuka is just going to whiff skills. Yeah. So I have rebuilt my Suzuka a couple times. I'm going to continue working on trying to get a better one. This is, I think, my best one right now. She has lower rating than a lot of my other ones, but I think that she has the best assortment of skills here. I did try to give her some skills for mid-race in the hopes that she would be able to maintain in her lead in the mid race. Because what can happen sometimes is usually when there's a Suzuka and she is very far in the lead, the other fronts can't catch up to her. But if the other fronts can catch up to her, and Summar Zensky is an example of somebody that can actually do this pretty easily. Not easily, but I have seen it happen with Summar Zensky. What can happen is if they trigger enough skills to where Suzuka enters the front overtake range, which means that they get close enough to Suzuka that like their AI can have them try to attempt to overtake her. Then they can actually, if they roll that wit check very well, they can go ahead and overtake her, and that's very bad for your comp. It's very bad if an opponent does it. It's also bad if your own Umas do it. So Suzuka having no mid race is really a little bit dangerous, especially if your Umas have a lot of your other two fronts have a lot of mid race, because if they overtake her, what happens is that you lose out on the unrestrained proc that you could get for your in your comp, right? And because unrestrained is so huge on this track, losing that is really painful. Additionally, if your other front is relying on a skill like shooting for victory, it's obviously not going to proc if they're number one. But this is why we're going to be putting angling and scheming on our other fronts. So I actually rolled this Maru last night, and I was really happy with her. So this Maru is probably the Maru that I'm going to be using in the CM. I want to remake my Fuji and my Suzuka both, so for now I'm happy with her. She was a fast learner run. Every time you get a fast learner run and then it rolls the medium S, you're just like, please God, give me good stats. And my stats are usable. They're not the best, but they're also not the worst. So this Maru has, because she got fast learner, she was able to take a lot of mid-race skills. It's on fast pace, straightaways, corners, and this can be a problem. I have a clip that I'll show actually where she does overtake my own Suzuka in the mid-race, and luckily she proceeds to win the lobby because she had angling and scheming at least that she could proc, along with her own redshift. But yeah, so you just want to be careful about kind of metering out your Umas. If you are running a red Maru and you're running a different Uma, like I'm running Fuji, maybe you'll run Taiki or Bourbon or something. Having your red Maru be ahead of the third Uma, if you can like force that to happen, it's a really good win con for red Maru. Because she already gets the redshift, and if she can redshift and pass the potentially dying Suzukas fast enough to hit angling and scheming, she can still get that win con. So yeah, whenever I see like Suzuka first, Maru second, Fuji third, that's kind of in like towards the late race, that's kind of when I know that I'm going to win the lobby. My Fuji, like I mentioned, I want to remake her. She's only medium A, which actually is pretty painful, and she did not get angling and scheming. I was trying to like be a little cheat a little bit and see if I could get angling and scheming from a grandparent because her affinity with Saiyan Sky is so bad, but that didn't happen. Luckily, she did roll Ignited Spirit Power, which is actually really, really huge. If there's any way you can get this skill, like it procs also at a very nice time. I've always seen the procs hit like really well. Sometimes it stacks on top of shooting for victory on Fuji, and then she gets like a 0.4. So that's really nice. Yeah, so in terms of build here, I should have gotten angling and scheming on her. I didn't. I should have gotten medium S. I didn't, so she's gonna be remade. For Fuji, I actually ran the same deck that I ran on Suzuka. I started taking my own advice and just running Smart Falcon Power because I was tired of not inheriting groundwork. I went like 3 days without a single groundwork inherit, and I was like, I'm done. So, yeah, I started running Smart Falcon Power, even though Fuji has a 20% power, 10% wit growth. I decided to try and high roll wit by using just 2 wit cards and 2 speed cards and some wit sparks. I ran with 9 wit, or sorry, not speed sparks. I ran with 9 speed on this side, and I believe this side is 2 power, no, I'm sorry, 4 power and 3 stamina. So with that, I was able to high roll speed a little bit, and because Fuji has that 20% power growth, I was able to use Smart Falcon power, explode on power a little bit, which built my stamina up, and then, you know, try to scoop up some wit wherever I could. Maruzensky is very similar to Suzuka. She has a 10% speed, 20% wit growth. And so again, I ran the exact same deck, because why mess with a good thing? Her power is a little bit low. I was trying to desperately raise her power at the end of my run, but yeah, that's my Maruzensky. And so yeah, that's my team. I did run this team in room matches 20 times. I know it's not a super high sample size, but I wanted to just get some kind of really quick early statistics here. So of the 20 room matches that I did, I won 15 of them, and I lost 5. So 75% win rate in a room match, I think, is actually pretty good, because room matches tend to be pretty sweaty. Of those 15 that I won, let me make sure I'm doing my math right. Yeah, 8 of them were Suzuka. So Suzuka won 8 of my 15 matches, so over half of my matches. Then Maruzensky won 5. Once she won by, actually, let's see, twice. She won by overtaking my Suzuka in the final straight when I was the solo Suzuka, because Maruzensky is just really strong, and she can overtake Suzuka, even when she's solo Suzuka. And also my Maruzensky is, I would say, significantly better than my Suzuka in terms of just stats. Twice, my Maruzensky won because I was in a double Suzuka lobby, and Maruzensky picked up the slack. And then once I won because Maruzensky won because she overtook Suzuka in the mid race, which she's not supposed to do. But luckily, she has angling and scheming, so when she overtook her mid race, she still got red shift, angling, and scheming, and was able to combine the two of those to fly to victory. Fuji won twice. Both runs were in a double Suzuka lobby. And so my Suzuka was dead by the time the finish line rolls around. And both times she won by very narrow margins because of medium A, probably because she doesn't have angling and scheming. But, you know, ignited spirit power stacking on top of shooting for victory. And also Fuji's unique is pretty good for a front runner. And I love Fuji, so I spent a billion statues to get her to 5 stars. So there is that. I did lose 5 matches. One match I lost to a Pace Mario, Pace Red Maruzensky, who I'm definitely going to love talking about in my next video. One match I lost to a Pace Taiki. That was a double Suzuka lobby where Maruzensky whiffed her early skills, and so that Pace Taiki didn't have a lot of competition. She was 4th, and my Fuji, as the only front in that section, couldn't match her. Once I lost to another Pace Taiki, where there was no double Suzuka, so I was the solo Suzuka. My Maruzensky whiffed her early skills, so she was behind the entire race. And the Taiki just hit, and sometimes that will happen because Taiki is very good, and that's why we try to make this triple front comp to counter that as much as possible. One of my losses was actually to a late Narita Brian, which I was really surprised by. She won by a nose in a double Suzuka lobby. I don't know, I don't remember if my Maruzensky like whiffed anything or how that happened, but yeah, that was great, good for her. And then one time I lost because I kidnapped my own Suzuka coming out of the gate, and my 2 fronts were ahead of her the whole race. They didn't get the pace up, and I lost to a Pace Maruzensky. So hopefully that'll give you some kind of ideas of like the win cons, the fail cons, how well this comp is doing. I'm going to show some examples of those races. I did record all of them, but obviously nobody wants to watch 20 room races. So I'll just try to show like the most interesting stuff, which is usually going to be rooms where I'm losing. But hopefully that's still entertaining, and you can kind of see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Thanks. Okay, so this is a lobby where my Suzuka misses taking the lead. She doesn't hit it. My other fronts do hit it, so they have a higher acceleration multiplier than she does right now, and they use it to get ahead of her and to block her. So now Suzuka can't get in front, and my friends have essentially kidnapped her, which is a pretty bad thing to happen. When you see this happening, you want to be like, no, because now Suzuka can't really get that far ahead of them. She's going to try, they're going to continuously try to overtake her, and then the lobby is not going to be paced up the way you want it to be to give your fronts an advantage, which is very bad. This is another fail case, although luckily in this case I still won the lobby. But basically this is what happens when you have a very good front Uma that's not Suzuka. Maruzensky here procs its on really early into the mid-race, which allows her to increase her velocity enough to where she sees Suzuka as an overtake target. So then she overtakes Suzuka. Because she crosses that threshold to where her AI is like, oh, there's a front and I can be ahead of her. And so now my Maruzensky's in front. And my Suzuka, who has a lower speed multiplier in the mid-race, cannot re-overtake. So this kind of screws up the lobby a little bit. And again, it is, I wouldn't say impossible to come back from, especially I'm very lucky that it was Maruzensky that did this here, because she has redshift angling and scheming, and she can still maintain that lead, and it doesn't completely shoot me in the foot. So that's it. Alright, so here I'm going to talk a little bit about what other Umas you want to run as your secondary fronts, the two fronts that you're going to have behind Suzuka. I was thinking about making a tier list for this, but I think that a lot of times tier lists can be really taken out of context, and I also don't think that I'm an expert in Umas that I don't use very often, and so, you know, while I can read their game tour pages, I don't really make aces of them, and I don't want to, like, have people think that I'm saying that one is definitely better than the other if I don't have that kind of experience. But I'm going to talk about what I know is very good, and what I know is pretty good, and then what I know is just like okay. So what I know is very good is Red Maru. So I mentioned this a couple times, but Redshift does have carryover for Red Maru only, so she gets a unique accel if she's 1st through 5th, which is very strong because she's going to be probably 2nd, probably 3rd, maybe even 4th or 5th in this team setup, depending on how many other fronts that are being run. And so she's really strong. A lot of people are going to be running Red Maru. You're going to be seeing quite a few of them probably in the champion meeting. So she's definitely a really attractive option for one of your fronts. The other front that I think is very, very good is Taiki Shuttle. And I talked about her a little bit when I was talking about running front Taiki versus pace Taiki, but if you're running a triple front comp, Taiki Shuttle is pretty much... you really should make her one of your fronts because she does get that full shooting for victory that the other Umas have to inherit. And when you don't have to inherit shooting for victory on her, you can have a little bit more freedom with skill points, and of course it's a better accel when it's on the original Uma. So for that reason, I do think that like the most meta way to run this comp is with Silent Suzuka and then Red Maruzensky and Taiki Shuttle. But I am not doing that because I have to run my Yoshi. As far as additional Umas go, Saiyan Sky is also a pretty strong choice for similar reasons that Taiki Shuttle is, in that, you know, she gets angling and scheming for free. She doesn't have to inherit it. But because angling and scheming is less reliable in this composition, she's not going to be as good. Right? She does get a little bit of props because she has the easier to build kit. She has Frontrunner Savvy, and she has some pretty strong mid-race skills, but because she is not quite as reliable as Taiki or Red Maru, I would put her maybe a little bit lower than them. Other good options are McQueen. So Duty of Dignity Calls is pretty good. The only thing is that so the proc of Duty of Dignity Calls is you have to be in the first 30% of the pack, right? for it to proc when you're on the final corner. And sometimes Suzuka can pull ahead so far that it's just Suzuka and then 35% of the way through the pack, and then Majima McQueen. So there's a possibility that she might not hit her ult. Now, granted, the times that you need her to hit her ult, which are going to be the times when there's going to be a lot of kerfuffle up near the front, and Suzuka might be not quite as far forward because you're experiencing one of those situations where maybe you kidnapped your own Suzuka, then this will proc, and it'll actually be pretty good. So I think that this is a pretty strong skill. I think that a lot of pace chasers will probably... I've seen a lot of pace chasers with this skill. I don't know that it's the best in a Suzuka lobby, but that kind of just goes back to show that lobby control pro is that you always know that you're going to have a Suzuka in the lobby, and so you can build your Umas accordingly. So Top Gun is going to be another option. She already has front A, medium A, and her flashy landing is pretty good for this scenario because she is going to be run as a front with a buddy front, so it's pretty likely that she's going to meet the conditions of being, you know, quote-unquote challenged. So Fuji, I actually think is not terrible in this role, because Lights of Vaudeville is actually a good front inherit. It's kind of one of the, well, you can always inherit this on your front kind of uniques, and because it works from first place, I actually have both, one of the room matches that Fuji won that I had, she actually procced this like 50 meters before the final, the finish line, and if she hadn't procced this, she wouldn't have won. So it's a pretty good skill, and it does help her in that final spurt finish line. Summer Marzensky is interesting. So I do think that Summer Marzensky is one of the better counters to a solo Suzuka if you don't have a Suzuka of your own. That being said, I don't think she's a reliable counter because what she really wants to do, if you remember my Marzensky overtaking my Suzuka in the early race and staying up there, that's what Summer Marzensky wants to do. And she has her unique to help her do it. And so I have seen like really stacked Summer Marzenskis that have extremely high wit, push forward really far, proc their unique, and then that takes them into the overtake threshold of Suzuka. So I think that Summer Marzensky might have a little bit of anti-synergy with the triple front comp, but I don't think that is so strong that you shouldn't consider using her because she is still very strong. If you're using Summer Marzensky, she's almost certainly going to be second in a lobby that doesn't have another Suzuka. And so you can try to plan around that a little bit, especially when it comes to inherits like angling and scheming or shooting for victory. And then I also have Bourbon. I got a lot of fronts on my account. I pulled for Umas more than cards, and it's really biting me in the butt sometimes. But yeah, so Bourbon here is honestly pretty good. She gets taking the lead, and so she doesn't have to run the Bourbon Wit card. It's not like the worst card in the world, so she still can run it, but you might want to run like the Tachyon Wit or something instead in her kits or in her deck. But she's pretty easy to build. I don't think that she really has anything that makes her stand out from the rest of the frontrunner pack, except for the fact that, you know, she has a strong mid-race and you don't have to run the Bourbon Wit card on her. Daiwa is one that I don't have a ton of experience with. I don't really run Daiwa very often, but if I'm... let me think about this. She has to be first and have somebody try to overtake her, or she has to be second and trying to overtake first place, I think, for her ult, or for her unique. And I think that I don't know how. Yeah, I honestly I couldn't say. I don't want to say something and then have people take it as law, and then like I don't want to be irresponsible like that. I think Daiwa's probably pretty good, but I would need more opinions on her. So if you love Daiwa, let me know in the comments how you think that she would do in this composition. And then Smart Falcon is another one that I think is actually going to be pretty strong. she will need a lot of turf sparks, but I think that she is going to be really good. Sparkly Stardom will probably, I mean, almost definitely proc, especially if you're running her in a comp that has 2 fronts. And you'll be able to get full usage out of that. She gets, you know, front runner savvy, and she at least gets prudent positioning, so you can try to gamble on getting the prudent positioning dominator combo on her. Everybody else, I think, is kind of in a similar tier of not technically a front, but maybe you could force them to be a front blob. Of course, I'm totally happy to hear anybody's opinions on if they have an Uma that they really like that they think would work in this comp. I would love to explore that a little bit more. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on the Umas that are probably going to be best in a triple front comp behind Silent Suzuka, because Silent Suzuka is a must for this comp. You can't really run a triple front comp without Silent Suzuka. Okay, so why are we running triple front over maybe Suzuka, 1 front, and 1 pace? Why are we running triple front over Suzuka and 2 pace, or Suzuka and some lates? I think I covered part of this earlier, but I really want to talk about what your 2 fronts are doing for one another. You can maybe see it in some of the clips that I posted already, but basically when you have 1 front and 1 Suzuka, what's going to happen is your 1 front, if the Suzuka is doing her job, your 1 front is not going to see Suzuka as an overtake target. So they're not going to speed up in that mid-race, and they're not going to like build that lead more and more and more, and use Suzuka's kind of pacer rabbit to accelerate themselves even further, right? They'll use Suzuka a little bit, they will stretch out a little bit further, but if they have like a buddy, both them and their buddy will help to push each other forward, very similarly to if you weren't using a Suzuka at all. So I think you'll find that if you run 2 fronts with the Suzuka, the 2 fronts will perform better than 1 solo front and maybe a pace. That was a huge guide. I'm sorry if it was a little bit boring in parts or if I was repetitive. I really wanted to get as much as I possibly could in here because I am really enjoying this team comp. I love building fronts, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to be able to do it again, especially using some of my favorite Umas. And so please let me know what you think about it. If you have any feedback or comments or anything like that. Again, like I still have the footage of all the room races. I've been thinking about maybe trying to do some just raw room race footage where maybe I just do them and then I comment over them, or I don't know, something like that, just to kind of show, because what I really want to do is be very transparent and very honest about my experience here. I don't want to like cherry pick the best of my races and like try to give the impression that that is normal, right? So I want to make sure that I'm being very honest and upfront about like the limitations of the comps that I'm running and what my Umas are, where maybe their shortcomings are. So yeah, please let me know, and let me know any other content that you might be interested in. I am still planning on doing some content for Red Maru. I'm really excited about that actually, because I think she's really cool in this event and I really love Maru a lot. But anyway, thank you so much again for watching, and also for watching the Suzuka guide. Honestly, the response to that has been it's completely blown me out of the water. It feels really surreal, and I don't know, I just feel really honored that people like watching my content. So thank you guys so much, and I'm definitely planning on doing more, and hopefully that will be very soon. Bye bye.